Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of Warm Weather Fans, the Sun Belt podcast. I am your host, Brian Stone, once again joined this week by Matt Miguez, once again joined by Zeke Palermo. What's up, boys? It was a crazy week around the entire nation as far as college football went, and the Sun Belt was no exception. Honestly, the way that things went, all in all, I was actually very glad that Southern did not play on Saturday, personally. Just because there was so many wacky things that happened. I mean, they could have blown a lead to, Northwestern State or whoever it was that South Alabama beat by 7 points a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I enjoyed watching a lot of the games, but yeah, it was a crazy week all in all. But Zeke, how's it going? And then you can throw it over to Matt.
I'm doing pretty well. I'm in the same boat. I'm glad Georgia State didn't play because it freed me up to watch some of the other. Although I'm gonna just cut it straight. If State was playing at the same time as Bama Vandy, I don't care how close that game is. You're cutting over to that game regardless. But I got the opportunity to watch other Sun Belt games I normally wouldn't have had the opportunity to. I'm also flying high because I remembered that I can make my own chocolate milk. So I've had like 3 glasses of chocolate milk in the past hour, and I am, fellas, this is awesome. This is great.
You're such a child.
This is awesome.
This guy. I'm doing well. As well as a Saints fan could be. After last night, now Derek Carr is going to miss multiple weeks with an oblique injury, which, just add it to the novel that is the New Orleans Saints injury report. Today is the 6-year anniversary, though, of Drew Brees becoming the NFL's all-time passing yards leader, which, that was a great day. In terms of college football, though, what a wild weekend. I mean, 5 teams in the top 11 get beat. If a college football playoff poll was coming out today, it would look absolutely wrecked. Just a really fun weekend, and this weekend might be even better.
Zeke, I don't know if you're seeing the same thing. Matt is either very stoic or is doing ventriloquism because he has not moved in like 8 minutes. So, Matt, you might want to refresh your video there, bud, because
he's also it also looks like he's in the Matrix. Matt, usually you've got a pretty good lighting setup, but today everything is greenwashed.
Yeah, I'm expecting like code to start falling. All right. Well, we'll start the discussion, and hopefully he can pop back in here and rejoin us. But yeah, it was very funny. It was like a Easter Island head was just talking to us. Yeah, Zeke, if you want to put him back on the thing, we can do. Okay, all right,
yeah,
cool.
We got him.
So, all right, sweet. So let's start off with last Thursday's game. Not really a surprise the way that it headed. We all kind of saw this coming. Texas State, just walks over Troy. Troy just doesn't. They don't have the contributors on the offensive side of the ball to even begin to kind of scare a team like Texas State. And Texas State was up 28-10 at half. They were up 14-0 in the first quarter. Jordan McLeod tore them up through the air, 20 of 29, 252 yards, 3 scores. Yeah, I mean, this one, it kind of encapsulates all of the issues that Troy has, which is their defense is not anywhere close to where it has been the last couple of years. And offensively, kind of the same deal, but I would say, honestly, to a greater extent, because they are having trouble scoring 3 touchdowns each week. And again, we've talked about their issues. Their offense is just frankly not that exciting to watch. Their head coach is very risk-averse, which is a bad combination when you also don't really try to do anything outside of kind of the box offensively. So, yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but, Troy doing exactly kind of what we anticipated.
Mm-hmm. They got a pretty good performance out of Tucker Kilcrease, which I thought was interesting. Still trying to Goose Crowder can't stay healthy for more than 2 games in a row. But I think that's something they can take away from this game, is that he went 17 for 28, 249, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. I'm curious to see if they ride that hot hot being a very loose term
Relative.
here. Relative, but I'm curious if they run that hand because I don't know what is Goose Crowder's a senior, isn't he?
I believe so.
Let me
I
I'll
think
check
so.
that, but I mean at a certain point, you get to a point in the season. No, he's a junior.
Okay.
So there goes that argument. I don't know. Curious to see where this quarterback position goes, though, because Goose Crowder, again, has been unable to stay healthy for even 4 straight quarters, and Tucker Gilcrease had a pretty good game. That's what stood out to me from Troy's perspective watching this game on Thursday.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a solid performance from Texas State for them to rebound after that loss to Sam Houston. And look, Troy is obviously not a great football team. I think we can all agree that they're even worse than we had them coming in. And look, that happens sometimes with new head coaches. It's going to take time for things to kind of get ironed out, get his players in, get them to buy into the culture, things of that nature. But yeah, I mean, a really solid performance on Texas State's part to get back into the win column and start Sunbelt play 1-0.
Speaking to that kind of topic, Matt, that you brought up, getting his guys in there, I'm really interested to see kind of long term what that looks like at Troy, because again, you come from a place in Notre Dame where you're competing for the cream of the crop in college football recruit wise, and Troy, I mean, you just don't frankly have that leeway. So I think that goes back to the scheme, concern I have a little bit is, if he wants to run something similar to what he ran at Notre Dame, you want a dominant offensive line, a really strong running game, all of those sorts of things. Are those things, kind of attainable without kind of having to find the diamonds in the rough? Like, and you didn't have to really deal with that ever at Notre Dame. Like, you had NFL caliber players on the offensive line and at running back and like tight end and all of that. So I don't know. I frankly, like Zeke, I do agree. I kind of want to see what happens with the quarterback position this year, but I wouldn't be shocked if we came into next season and their quarterback room was just completely brand new. Yeah. Like, none of these guys seem like they can be difference makers long term. And I think you just need somebody more dynamic, frankly. Like, all of these guys are kind of built out of the same type of mold, and none of them really pop. Like, when you watch them, they're just kind of like, yeah, they're like, those stereotypical, run, pass offenses where it's 2 runs and then it's a play action on third down, and, rarely it hits, but there's no real variety. That none of these guys are like that dynamic of players. So I wouldn't be surprised if this was one of those things where, like Marshall did, where all of a sudden, one of these guys is still on the team and he's like the 3rd string quarterback at that point. And we try to find somebody in the portal, or we get like a early enrollee or somebody to come on and figure it out at the quarterback spot. But I mean, do we have anything else on Texas State? I mean, it was a good performance, but again, they're beating a team that's currently in the kind of the doldrums of the Sun Belt. So cool.
Well, we talked about it right before this news came out, but Texas State ultimately not moving to the Mountain West, and we all kind of kissed them goodbye.
Well, they haven't ruled out moving to the Pac-12 if that's an option. So that's still potentially on the table. It's more like the way that I read their whatever news piece or release or whatever they sent to reporters was, hey, if Pac-12 wants to come calling, we're definitely going to listen, but the Mountain West just doesn't seem like a fit. And I'm like, that kind of was the highlight of all of the concerns that we talked about last week, but it sounds like they're very still open going out west if the Pac-12 comes a calling. So they're not a lock to stick around yet. But it's looking less and less likely kind of by the day, because the Pac-12 has kind of moved quickly to grab a lot of those Mountain West schools, the ones that have been kind of the cream of the crop, But if we're good on this, then we can move on. Texas State is now 3-2 with the victory. 1-0 in Sunbelt play. Troy is now 1-5 and is 0-2 in the conference. Let's get to Saturday's games. Marshall beats the crap out of App State. App State has been outscored the last 8 quarters 100-51. So they are getting beat by an average of 25 points per game the last 2 games. Matt, I know you talked about the kind of situation in Boone and, the Hurricane Helene and like all of that sort of stuff. But with each one of these types of games, it just feels like people are just are getting louder and louder, being like, we understand all of the outside stuff, but Shawn Clark's got to go at the end of the day.
Yeah, look, this was not a great performance by any means from App State. I mean, in the first quarter, you only put up 3 points. In the third quarter, you only put up 7. I mean, you did a nice job to hang in there late, but the 21 points you gave up in the second quarter was kind of the nail in the coffin early on. Look, I'm willing to continue to give App State the benefit of the doubt for another week. Because, again, I agree, this was not a great performance, and this is not the standard that App State is used to. And I will say that Shawn Clark's in trouble. He's in a lot of trouble. Now, if they come down to Lafayette and have another performance like this where they just kind of look lackadaisical, they put up a couple points because they've got weapons, because they do. They've got a wealth of weapons. And they lose, by 15, 17 points, then I'm going to sound the alarm because that would be now 3 in a row.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't happen by accident. But yeah, clearly everything that's going on there, their minds are clearly in another place. So like I said, willing to give them the benefit of the doubt one more week. But yeah, App State's in a really tough spot right now.
So Zeke, I just had like 2 cents I just kind of wanted to put in, and I tweeted this the other day kind of as a joke, but it's not a joke. App State is now getting the full. Their defensive coordinator's name is Scott Sloan. They're getting the full Scott Sloan defensive experience here because he was previously the defensive coordinator at Georgia Southern before he went back to App. This scheme, when it works and you're getting pressure consistently, it looks great. There's no, 10 out of 10, no notes. When you don't get pressure, this scheme is very tough on the safeties. And one of the complaints that I often had before he left, when he used to coach under Lunsford, was our guys deep in the secondary just look lost at times. And now you're kind of seeing, the chickens come home to roost a little bit, where those safeties in the deep third or whatever of the field get lost a lot. And it makes it very difficult when you also are having trouble stopping the run. But I'm going to go ahead and let you go.
Well, I was curious, Brian, because you have been ringing the Braylon Braxton bell for a couple weeks now. They finally gave him the reins. Only 14 pass attempts, completed 8 of those, so pretty solid efficiency, but a big deviation from what Marshall has done offensively. They let Braxton instead just kind of run the whole game. He led the team both teams in rushing yards and in carries. This is a big win for you. You've been on this boat for several weeks now. Do you guys think they stick with this? Because I can't put it past Marshall to not just try Stone Earl next week.
I think it would be a huge mistake if they went away from this. He's been the most dynamic player at the quarterback spot that they've had in a minute. I don't even know who else would be in contention for that, but he just gives them a different element that the other quarterbacks on the roster, whether it be Earl or Pennington or whoever, they just don't have the mobility and the kind of the playmaking freelancing ability that Braylon Braxton has. Here's the thing, like, I think AJ Turner, their running back, is pretty talented, and I've kind of been I haven't said it on this show, but I've kind of been surprised they've been reticent to give him more volume just because of how efficient he's been. But when you have a lack of kind of receiving talent that Marshall does a little bit, excuse me, it makes it a little more difficult to stomach, hey, we're just not going to play Braylon Braxton because like you need a dual threat guy who can do a bunch of stuff and extend plays, wait for these receivers that, frankly aren't top of the line, Sunbelt type talents. You need time for them to get open because they're not going to win one-on-one like you would want a regular receiver to. So you need as much help as you could possibly get. And so after I saw him play, I can't remember who they played. It was like the second game of the season. It was like all of them kind of got some run. He looked like the best by far, and then they were like right back to Stone Earl. So I don't know, but I think he would, Charles Huff, if he really wants to keep his job, and it seems like he wants to, I think he would be foolish to go away from Braxton a second time because he's already done it once. So
right.
Yeah,
no,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear your spiel on that because I know you were itching to talk about it.
Well, I just think like you have to, at a certain point, you have to do something different. If the thing you've been doing is not working, what's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And pocket passer, 5-step drop guys that they've brought in under Huff, I mean, frankly, just haven't really panned out except for that one season that they had 9 wins. So you just have to do something different. So, I mean, Zeke, I want to get your take on Shawn Clark. Where do you kind of stand on him? Are you still a wait and see? Because I'm not an App fan, so I have no skin in the game. But if I was an App fan, I would be like, I understand with the hurricane stuff, but like this started before that. Like the South Alabama game preempted that. So like we can't just sweep everything under the rug of it was the hurricane for us. Like
I said last week that I think I established that I had a shorter temper than both of you with him. And I think to this point about like the hurricane and the, totality of the circumstances, you had the game against Liberty canceled. I understand like an argument to be had about not doing it quite yet, but you need a real big turnaround when they play at Louisiana, which I don't foresee happening.
I don't either.
Like when you get into the end of October, they play Georgia State. The week after that, play Old Dominion. Like those are games where Shawn Clark could feasibly, save his job or something to that effect. But I worry it'll have been too late in the season. This is a gut call. I have no source on this, but I get the sense that they're just waiting for a loss to Louisiana to cut him loose, which is a shame. Shawn Clark's one of the best coaches in the Sun Belt. From a historic perspective, at the very least, say what you want about him actively. But as I said last week, like he hasn't done enough for what this program should be able to do, what this program has done in the past. And so it's just a matter of time whether they wait out the contract or cut him loose. So I don't know. I understand why you don't do it quite yet, but time's running out.
I don't remember the exact number, but somebody posted what his buyout would be if he was fired this year, and I think it's close to $1 million. So I don't know sort of where the App State athletic department's financials sit today, but I think his buyout's kind of significant because didn't they just extend him like recently-ish?
Right.
It's been in kind of the last year or two.
So it's not I think it was 22. It was a couple years from at this point, but it within the grand scheme of things, relatively recent. It wasn't like it was pre-COVID or something.
Yeah.
So I'm looking. I'm not seeing $1 million number again as I just quickly search this. I'm seeing in the $500,000 range. But again, I'm just
okay.
kind of quickly glancing. I'm not gonna say that with certainty.
I guess the Twitter. So I just searched his name after this game because I was wondering if people were willing to kind of give him. No, I wanted to see if people were kind of on the Matt side of things, and I don't even mean that like in a mean way or whatever. I just legitimately kind of wanted to see where everybody stood with the hurricane stuff with him, and all of them. The sentiment that I saw was basically, "Hey, yeah, this was really unfortunate. This happened to us, but we can't tolerate this level of play any longer. Like, you're doing damage to the App State brand by keeping him around." So I don't know. Like, it's gonna really be hard to stomach 2-4 potentially 2-4, 0-3 in the Sun Belt, last place in the East. If that happens this weekend, yeah, I think you have to make a move like on Sunday. Like, I just simply don't think there's any. I don't think there's any spin you can put on, hey, guys, this season's just going to be a wash and he's going to be back next year. Like, I just think that's really difficult. And this is Joey Aguilar's, like, I think last season, right? So you're going to have to start over at quarterback
again. He is
again?
a senior.
So, I mean, that just seems like a perfect kind of chance to break and be like, hey, next year we start off with a new head coach, new quarterback, just start fresh, kind of wipe the slate clean and go from there. I think is like the best possible outcome for them.
So I can't find anything on his buyout, but I did find that he made $925,000 last year.
I don't know. I just saw somebody tweet that. Like, again, I didn't know if that was correct or not, but like, I honestly wasn't going to go digging. I wasn't going to FOIA the state of North Carolina to try to figure out what his contract looked like. So I was just like, I'll take this for it. Like, he tweeted it. But we talked about it. Braxton, 15 carries, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns. He scored 5 touchdowns in total. Yeah, I mean, it was 28-17 at half, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be another, kind of South Alabama type performance. And what happened? And I know I brought up the thing with Sloan. What has happened to their defense? Like, it's one thing for the offense to just not click. It's another to allow like 50 points every week. Like, what? I don't understand what went wrong there.
Did they get a coordinator change?
I don't think so.
Because they lost a fair bit of talent. Second, third, maybe, from a defensive perspective, to probably James Madison and Troy. But Marshall lost a lot of that production that they had last year. And I would imagine it's just. We talking about App?
Oh, I couldn't tell which team you were talking about. But
I was talking about Marshall because I feel like Marshall has lost a ton of defensive. What's wrong with App State's defense? I don't know. They just suck.
There you have it. It's putting it as simply as you possibly could. Well, if we're good on this one, Marshall is now 3-2 this season, 1-0 in the conference. Again, App 2-3. 0-2 in conference play, and was the presumptive favorite to win the East, and now is in last place in the East. Matt just put it in our private chat. His buyout is $500,000 before January. In 2025, I think they'd be crazy to let him survive to 2025. I think that would be let's just let him sink this ship totally type situation, especially bringing in a new quarterback after Aguilar.
So let me rephrase. January of 2025.
But even that, you missed the early signing day period. So
true.
all of those guys get freed up to transfer, right? If that happens.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So I think you benefit from making a move. It doesn't have to be like immediately, but like sooner than later, you need to get on the search for your next head coach so that these recruits that he's currently talking to or have already committed know who that's going to be and kind of know where they stand with that new guy and there's not just like a mass exodus immediately after signing day. But yeah, I think they would just kind of eat the extra $250K just to kind of stick around with some of these players. But yeah, this has been a rough season for App, both on and off the field. And, again, we feel for the people that were affected by the hurricane, but football wise, it's just the results have just not been there. All right, getting into this next one. Coastal holds off Old Dominion. Old Dominion tried to rally late, but Coastal held off 45-37. Ethan Vasco, again, showed up this week randomly, and next week he'll be back to completing less than 50% of his passes. 19 of 26, threw for 367 and 3 scores. Wright, their receiver, 4 catches, 148 and a score. This kind of Old Dominion put up a nice fight, but this is kind of what we talked about last week, which is they get up, they kind of build, upset, and then they just go right back to square one. And later in the season, they'll find another team to upset. But this is what they do. They get up for like 1 or 2 games a season, and then the rest of them are just kind of whatever performances. So defensively, they just have a lot of issues once again.
They got up for this one as well. I mean, they were step for step with Coastal really the whole game. They just kind of missed out on a touchdown. Coastal scored 2 in the third. They only scored once, they being Old Dominion here. This was maybe the best, despite the loss. I would say this is the most legitimate offensive performance we've seen from Old Dominion. I've been, we've all said that this team just kind of picks points out of thin air, short drives. The yardage doesn't typically match the touchdown numbers, which is typically a good barometer of whether your success is sustainable. This is the first time I've looked at an Old Dominion game and said, shoot, they actually played pretty well, at least from an offensive perspective. They let, as you allured to, the Cinderella, fairly godmother strikes 12 Ethan Vasco to have an excellent game, but he's just going to do that every other week. I think Old Dominion should be really happy about this. They're 1-4 and, bottom of the Sun Belt or of the East, ahead of only the disappointing App. But they played pretty well, and that shocked me.
The issue that I have is there's never any guarantee that they're going to capitalize on like 2 strong performances. You know what I mean? Like that's always the drawback for me is, okay, they've had 2 really good performances back to back, but how shocked would you be on a scale of 1 to 10 if next week they came out and put up 16 points in their next game? Like I wouldn't be shocked at all.
That feels more likely than not.
Right. So that's kind of what I mean is like a normal team, improves each week, and Old Dominion will go from, point A to point Z faster than your head can turn, and we're back to square one with them. So that's always been my issue.
Is Ricky Ronnie's job on the line?
I don't know, because they seem fine regardless of the results. So how could you tell?
Right. That's what I'm kind of asking. I can't get a vibe, so I didn't know if either of you had any kind of thought on that, because I feel like it probably should be. But like you said, I think they're okay with just competing.
In 3 seasons, he'd made 2 bowl games, which, again, like we've said, that's good enough for Old Dominion. I'm sure Old Dominion fans let us know, but that's kind of good enough for Old Dominion, making 2 bowls in 3 years. If he can get out to 4 or 5 wins, which looking at the rest of the schedule doesn't feel absolutely absurdly out of the question. I think he's at the very least not fired. Whether he's safe or, not on the hot seat, that's a different concern. But, I think at this point it's not as imminent as Shawn Clark, which is funny to say because they've won less games.
I get the vibe, and I don't know that I can say this about another team in the Sun Belt. they're the only team that I'm aware of that has zero expectations. Like they're fine with whatever they receive.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never heard anybody say, hey, we expect to be better than this. I've never heard anybody say they're disappointed in like the overall results. And Zeke, I know what you were saying about the bowl game, but they've never been, and they've only been in the Sun Belt for a couple seasons, but they've never been within striking distance of being in the title game in the East. Like you're always middling to bad. So they always just kind of seem like, yeah, whatever we get, we're happy. We're happy to be playing football on Saturdays is the vibe that I kind of get. So if you're happy with that, and Zeke, like you said, if you're happy being, in 1-score games, but you're 1-4 and you just want to be competitive, fine. Let it, and I'm not knocking them, but even ULM last year was like, hey, Terry Bowden, enough's enough. And we're not a good football team historically, but enough's enough. And Old Dominion just kind of seems like, yeah, as long as we're not getting blown out 12 straight weeks in a row, like we're cool. So,
to each their own, I guess.
I guess. Like I remember when we did our Old Dominion preview, we have one very passionate Old Dominion fan for sure that listens to this, and he was very upset by the way that we kind of categorized the team, mostly because apparently one of the games they played last year, we got the scores flipped. What the horror. But it was just like, he was very upset about that, and then he was like, we're in all these 1-score games, and I was just kind of like, yeah, dude, if you're cool with being in 1-score games and being, but you're ceiling 6-6, go for it.
But the problem with constantly being in 1-score games is that 9 times out of 10 they don't win them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That was kind of the flaw in the logic that I saw, and I was just like,
if you went 6-4 in 1-score games, then I mean, solid, good job. But like, if you're 2-8, 1-9, like, okay, figure out how to execute better down the stretch.
I think being in 1-score games like that should not ever be a team's calling card.
Well,
because look at the actual good teams, like the legitimately good teams that played this week. Okay, Texas State won by 21. Marshall won by, what is that, 10, 15 points. Coastal, they're whatever. But it's like Louisiana won by 2 scores. So like the really good teams are being able to kind of close these games out. And Old Dominion, again, they're always in 1-score games, but 9 times out of 10, like Matt said, that doesn't fall their way. So if you just want to be competitive and you're fine with, 6-6 being your ceiling, fine. Like I'm not here to tell you to live differently.
Since they were FBS, they joined Conference USA in 2014. Fellas, just throw me a guess how many more than 6 win seasons Old Dominion has had.
1.
0, right?
1. They went 10-3 in 2016. Other than that, no more than 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're perfectly content with being a 500 program.
That's fine. No beef.
Fine. For a long time, ULM would have been fine being a 500 team.
Of course.
Like, they're playing a lot better this year, but they would have been like, oh, thank God we went 6-6. Like, but again, ODU just seems to be like, yeah, fine with us. And I'm like, all right, fine. Good for y'all.
At one time, UL was there too.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, if UL went 6-6.
He's gone. Okay, so closing that out, Coastal Carolina moves to 4-1 with the victory, 1-0 in the Sun Belt. Old Dominion is now 1-4 and 0-1 in the conference. This next one here, I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys, and I don't know. No, it's South Alabama, Arkansas State. Matt,
yeah,
sorry.
I know. That's what I'm happy about.
Okay, so I'm gonna be totally honest with you guys. I don't know if this goes against my journalistic integrity or whatever. I watched the first half of this one and I switched games because I was bored out of my mind. This was so boring. Neither one of these teams could convert on 3rd down. I think each of them finished worse than 40% on 3rd down. So it was like if it got to 3rd down, there was a punt coming the next play. It was just they would move down the field, and then they would get right outside of field goal range and have to punt. That was how both teams played. And I
Look,
was just
bro,
like, this is so boring, dude.
it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, Sunbelt quarterback god Jalen Raynor got back to doing Jalen Raynor things. Threw for 345, my apologies, 172 of those yards to Corey Rucker. And with this win, proves my point from the beginning of the season. Arkansas State and Texas State have the same exact record. So eat it, Zeke.
Bro, they scored 18 points. What do you want me to eat?
Winners win, baby. It doesn't matter how many points you score. You scored more than the other team.
All right.
Yeah, I wasn't the biggest doubter of Arkansas State. Now, I will say the one thing I do want to give them credit for, they did get stops defensively, and that was the big concern that I had coming into this one. And the reason I took South Alabama was I was like, this team historically does not get stops defensively. So that was my big issue. They actually did very good job containing like Gio Lopez and all of those guys, Fluff Bothwell, but like, and keeping them out of the end zone, particularly because, again, they were coming off of a performance where they put up, 48 against App State the week before. So, I mean, this could have easily went south in that same direction. But I flipped it over to James Madison, ULM, because I was bored out of my mind. I can only watch two teams punt so many times, and it wasn't even like, oh, man, this is a really fun, like, intense defensive matchup. I was just like, both of these teams can't convert on third down.
It was 6-3 at half.
Yeah, I couldn't do it, dude. I tried.
The game started punt, field goal, interception, punt, turnover on downs, field goal was the first half. I don't blame you. This was not an exciting watch, except it kind of was because Gio Lopez played very well. Jalen Raynor played very well. But like as you just said, Brian, the whole shtick was neither of these teams could convert on third down, which long-term gives me worry. Jalen Raynor, as good as he is not going to complete 30 of 39 every week. He's not going to go for 350 every week. He's going to hang in the high twos. He's going to play exceptionally, but that inability comes down to an inability to run the ball from Arkansas State. Was very unimpressed by that. South Alabama, on the other hand, did run the ball well. They just, for whatever reason, couldn't convert. And ultimately, I was shocked South Alabama didn't win this game because I thought they played better than Arkansas State over the long run of this game. But I don't know. Inability to turn, third and shorts into first downs is going to kill both of these teams if they can't figure that out.
Let me put this in perspective. If I was in a Saw movie and Jigsaw was like, hey, I'm going to torture you, just put this game on and force me to watch it. Like, I can't do it, dude. Like, it's one thing, again, I used to like watching the old, like, Steelers-Ravens games when they were both, like, huge, like, hard-hitting defenses. This was not that. This was just two teams that got to third down and couldn't do a thing. So I was just like, oh, God. And then I saw what the score of the next game we're going to talk about was, ULM James Madison, and I was like, ooh, I kind of want to flip over and see what's going on in that one. So I missed the end of this one because I was watching ULM try to throw that game away.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. But, again, Arkansas State played well defensively, forced a bunch of third and 3 and outs or whatnot, forced South Alabama to punt a bunch, and they ended up grinding out a win, which is not very typical of the Butch Jones Arkansas State teams thus far. So this is a real kind of change of script for them. But so Arkansas State with the victory is now 3-2, 1-0 in the Sun Belt. South Alabama is 2-4 and 1-1 in the conference. And then let's talk about it now. UL Monroe, 4-1 UL Monroe, whose only loss is to the number 2 team in the country in or I guess number 1 now, Texas. Their defense is for real. Like, the offense is not dynamic. Like, they really do have trouble like generating consistent like production either running or throwing the football. Like Arminta or General Booty or whoever they throw out there in quarterback, they really have trouble throwing the football. Like it's really tough to watch. But they run the ball well enough with like guys like Hardy, and I don't know who their defensive coordinator is, but he probably needs to be considered for like a head coaching job or something after this season. The way that they've played, they've been great on defense.
And I'm joking here, but ULM fans are probably sitting here saying, "Stop the count," because
why not?
Well, because if you take a look at the Sun Belt standings, if the season ended today, Monroe would be representing the Western Division of the Sun Belt Conference Championship game.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "Stop the count. We're done. We're good. We've done it." Look, another. I'm not going to say really good, but look, I mean they did everything that you asked of them to, right? They fall behind 10-0. They score 14 points in the second quarter to make it 14-3. It's a stalemate in third quarter, and then they get just enough done in the fourth to walk out with a 21-19 win. It's not pretty by any stretch of the imagination. The stats aren't going to wow you, but now we're sitting here saying, Christ almighty, ULM's 4-1. They just beat JMU. And now, no, go ahead.
Go ahead. All I was going to add was Alonzo Barnett came back to earth finally. Like he
Correct.
was playing out of his mind against UNC and stuff and Ball State, but he finally faced a defense that was semi-competent. And now it's like, hey, guess what? I completed less than half of my passes. Hey, I threw, a bunch of really errant balls that like shouldn't have probably even have been attempted, but I did
Correct.
it anyway. So, again, but credit to ULM's defense because they forced those things to happen.
And you know what's crazy talking about ULM and the start that they're off to? If you look at the rest of their schedule, like there is a legitimate possibility that ULM wins 8 games.
Yeah.
Like a legitimate possibility that they win 8 games. I mean, Southern Miss, they might beat Southern Miss at home this weekend. So that's 5. You go on the road to South.
Will.
You go on the road to South. Who knows? Who knows?
Very plausible.
Marshall, that's a winnable game.
That's a coin flip to me.
Depending on which Marshall team shows up. Texas State's probably going to beat you.
Probably. But I don't. Here's the thing with the Texas State game. I do think Texas State will ultimately win, but I do not think it's going to be pretty or easy for the Bobcats. They're going to make them earn it the whole time.
Do we think that Auburn beats ULM?
Yes.
I think ULM beats Auburn.
There's some issues on the plains right now. They look
Y'all
really
thought I was
bad.
kidding last week. I was not. I was kind of kidding. I wasn't really, though.
They look really bad. And then you've got Arkansas State and Louisiana. Out of those last 7 games, like, again, and I have to say it again to wrap my mind around it as a longtime Cajuns fan that has watched ULM be in the dungeon. There's a legitimate chance Monroe wins 8 games.
Matt, can I ask you a question that actually kind of transitions into a question I wanted to ask? Let's say, for sake of argument, for some reason, like I just want to set this up. I haven't gone through everybody's schedule and parsed out the wins and the losses. Let's say ULM and UL have identical West records at the end of the season, and the winner of that game, I don't know. Let's just hypothetically say it's determined who goes to the Sun Belt title game representing the West based on the results of that game. What is your worry level on a scale of 1 to 10 now, having seen ULM through 5 games?
9.
Damn.
9.
Damn.
Look, I'm the type of I have seen the ULM rivalry game. And look, there are some Cajuns fans that will sit here and say that it's not a rivalry. It is. It just is. It's 2 teams that have been in the same conference for a long time. And I get the whole, well, you got to be competitive to be a rival. I get that. there's some bad blood between these two schools. There just is. I have seen this game go sideways one too many times. I mean, 3 years ago, 2020, the year before the Cajuns won it all. If ULM doesn't miss a field goal as time expired, UL doesn't go to the Sun Belt Conference Championship game that year to play Coastal. Yep. Well, of course, that ends up getting canceled. But like, you don't go to the championship game if they don't miss a field goal at the end of the game. So we've been in this kind of situation before with ULM. But yeah, no, if it comes down to Monroe and Louisiana and the winner represents the West and it's in Monroe, I don't like that at all.
What does this do to the your Sun Belt power rankings? Because James Madison last week was probably top of mine, and I don't think ULM overtakes them for that one spot. But where, who are your top 3 teams right now from a power ranking perspective? Because this shakes it up.
I would have to say Louisiana 1. I would say James Madison 2. And then I would say ULM 3.
Sure.
Or you can flip those even because ULM has the head-to-head victory. Mm-hmm. But it didn't really get exposed in this game. But one of the things we talked about last week was JMU's defense could be a real problem for them, like when it comes time. And they hadn't really been... Again, they let up 50 points to North Carolina. Like, they scored 70, and that was all pretty and fine and great and dandy. But in reality, people that were realistic about JMU's outlook, that had to be in the back of their mind, being like, hey, if Ball State was a more serious team that could actually convert some of these like 3rd and longs or whatever, or get to a 3rd and manageable, we could have been in some real trouble despite what the final score is of that game, because it got ugly because of how many drives JMU just scored like that. And now it's like you see, like, if ULM had a more talented offense, and frankly, offensively, they're kind of challenged. Like, Arminta is very limited in what he's able to throw as far as routes go, and like the timing just doesn't seem to quite be there. But if ULM had a better offense, I mean, I think this is like a 2-score victory, because JMU simply, they could not figure out where the pressure was coming from. When ULM decided to send blitzers, it was like, again, Alonzo Barnett's eyes look like the big, like, cartoon dog eyes. Like, he was like, oh, shoot, they're bringing 5 again. Where are they coming from? There were guys that were delayed blitzers. There were guys that were coming and then dropping out, or looked like they were going to play defensive line and dropping into a zone. And he just seemed like lost. So, like, again, their defensive coordinator crushed it. Now, I do want to say, I brought this up before we started. They really tried their hardest to absolutely blow the end of this game, because ULM had a play. They had 4 minutes, I believe, to kill at the end of this one. So all they had to do was run the ball every opportunity that they had, and they kept getting, it was like penalty, negative run for yards, and then they would, convert or do something to keep the drive going. They decided to throw the ball at one point. And if JMU's defender, if the ball, it got reviewed and eventually overturned, but it was initially reviewed as a ruled an interception. If the ball doesn't touch the ground, I think JMU gets the ball at like midfield with like 3 minutes left. And all they would have had to have done is drove down and kicked a field goal. So like ULM got bailed out by that, but defensively they played great. They were doing some boneheaded stuff at the end of the game offensively.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can't give them enough credit. I mean, this turnaround Bryant Vincent's put together has been nothing short of amazing, truly.
How many wins did Bowden have in his first year? Was it 3? Did they reach 4?
I think he peaked at 4. Yeah, I think their first season was like 2 or 3.
Let's see.
Under him.
They had 4 in the first game, or first year under Bowden.
Okay.
Which, mind you, they were coming from 0-10 the year before.
In
0-11.
21 and 22, they won 4 games in both of those seasons.
Okay.
Right.
And then in 23, they went 2-10. That's when they fired him.
Right. Okay.
But it's again, I tweeted this from the at Warm Weather Fans on X. I tweeted this from our account. Should they be like receiving votes, like in the top 25? They're only losses to the number one. They're only losses to the number 1 team in the country.
No, but you got to think about where they started. They probably started in the 120s.
I hate the preseason shit, dude. Like it's the worst.
I mean,
like,
I agree. I agree with you, but they haven't beaten anybody.
They just beat an undefeated James Madison school.
Yeah, but that school, James Madison, wasn't getting recognition.
They were also receiving votes after last week. I mean, all I'm saying is I didn't say that put them at 25. I just said, should they also be receiving votes? And I think they should kind of be in that mix until they lose. Because if you say, hey,
no,
ULM can't be. If you say ULM can't be receiving votes, my issue is, okay, then no Sunbelt team should, because it's not like they're in the SEC and they get to play Georgia and Alabama and Texas every week. Like, they played one ranked team. They probably don't play another this year, so they don't have a chance to make up, that ground. They were 4-0 other than losing to Texas.
I wasn't sold at first, but looking at it, guess who's ranked number 17? A team whose only loss is to Oregon, a team I wasn't high on to start the year. And admittedly, they have the Heisman winner for sure, but it's Boise State. Who have they played? Their only loss is to Oregon, which is ranked lower than Texas. I was not sold on this argument at first.
But they only lost to Oregon by 2.
That is the argument, yeah. But I'm not advocating that they put them in the top 25. I'm just saying, like, at the end of also receiving votes, they should be at the very end of that list. Like, if you mapped it out past 25, they should be like 38th or something.
Mm-hmm.
But they should kind of be in that mix a little bit. Like, they're not as good as the service academy schools, which should probably both be ranked, but they're right at the tail end of that kind of group, because again, their only losses to the number 1 team in the country. Like, other than that, I don't know. So, but yeah, no, great win for ULM. Brian Vincent's been basically a miracle worker for them. So they are now 4-1 and 2-0 in Sunbelt play, sitting atop the West. James Madison is now 4-1 and 0-1 in the conference. Getting into this last one here. So Matt, Louisiana beat Southern Miss 23-13. I was keeping up with this on like the game cast, but I wasn't watching it obviously because I knew you'd be on top of it. I have to ask, was UL just having trouble like ripping off big plays? Because it seemed like every time they had the ball, it was like the drives were just incremental. Like down the field, there wasn't like a, hey, this is a 78-yard touchdown pass or something, a big throw down the field. It was kind of like, we're marching every time, but it's just methodical. It's not like ripping off big plays.
Yeah, no, they didn't really rip off big plays at all on Saturday night. It was very, methodical, run the clock. I mean, they dominated the time of possession, 41-18.
Seriously, 41-18.
41-35 to 18-25.
That is obscene.
Yeah, just absolutely dominated the time of possession. I mean, you had 1, 2, 3 scoring drives that were 5 minutes or longer. Just absolutely did whatever you wanted. I don't think that it was so much of a inability to get big plays. I think the game went exactly how they kind of planned it to. I mean, Southern Miss got some stops. Don't get me wrong. That they were able to get some get our running backs to the ground. And I think they did a good job of downfield coverage. But I think if the Cajuns would have, called shot plays, that they could have gotten some deep balls. But look, in the end, I think that this game went, pretty well. Ben Woldridge was phenomenal again. Draylon Washington coming out finally this season was nice to see. Ben looked a little nicked up late in the game. There was a shot of him on the sidelines kind of messing with his shoulder. We'll see, if that comes of anything. But look, the biggest thing with the Cajuns, and I'd love to hear y'all's thoughts on this, I'm ready for them to play a complimentary football game.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is you have games where the offense plays really well, and you have games where the defense plays really well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to see them have a game where they both play solid. Right?
Right. I was disappointed that they were unable to put this game away sooner. I hear what you're saying about like this not necessarily being a game where the game plan was to go out and hang 40 on a really bad Southern Miss team. But I anticipated this to look a lot more like the Kennesaw State game or the Grambling game. Southern Miss is definitely not Grambling, but is flirting with the same tier as still winless as an FBS team, Kennesaw State, than it is with like Wake Forest. So I think that was my biggest disappointment was like of all the games you're going to play all year, of all the conference games, Southern Miss should be the biggest beat up that you have on the schedule. And regardless of game plan, I think that was disappointing. Am I looking too far into that, Matt?
No, I don't think that you are. Because I think largely from a fan perspective, that was also the expectation.
Sure.
Go to Hattiesburg, beat them up. Work out some kinks offensively, and then see where this kind of stretch run of really tough Sunbelt games takes you. And look, before we move on from this game, I really want to give a shout out to Cam Whitfield, junior linebacker. He had a 3-sack game last year against South Alabama that got him Sunbelt Defensive Player of the Week. He once again was named Sunbelt Defensive Player of the Week this week after getting 4 sacks in Hattiesburg on Saturday night. 6 total tackles, 4 sacks. Just a dominant performance again from Cam. So I had to shout that out because, I mean, God, how many times do you see a 4-sack game?
Matt, I actually wanted to take an opportunity to kind of answer your question. I mean, from my perspective about the complimentary football thing, I think they certainly have that in them. And I think that once they kind of put the pieces together, they're going to be a really good football team. But I think it says a lot that despite not having those types of performances where both sides are playing well at the same time, that you're still able to win these types of games or, Wake Forest or whatever. I think that says a lot about the team.
Yeah.
Now, again, your only loss is to Tulane, which is nothing to hang your head about. They're a really good football team. So, yeah, if you put together a full performance, I think, I think that makes them the favorites in the West as it sits today, because we've talked about Texas State's defensive woes. And I forgot to mention this when we talked about, did you guys hear Texas State's best defender, took a red shirt and, is transferring? That was...
Yeah, he's pulling the same move that everybody else is. Ben Bell had 10 sacks last year, and he had 3 to start the season already this year. And he said, you know what? I'm gone.
I'm going to go get a payday somewhere.
Yeah, see ya. I'm going to go work out on my own, take a red shirt. I'll transfer in the offseason. I'll see you later.
I'll see what P4 comes calling.
Yikes.
Did you guys read the story about this proposal for a 70-team division
Yeah.
that's going to
College
save
football-
everybody except for
college
half of the
football-
FBS.
College football is dead as we know it.
Yeah.
You're screwed, man.
As a doornail.
College football is dead as we know it. But hey, look, keep stacking that paper, baby. That's all that matters.
That's all that matters. Hey, also, both of you guys on this game, the last little note, I checked in, I want to say early second quarter, mid second quarter ish to see how both teams were performing. I think Tate Rodemaker had 8 yards passing, like midway through the second quarter. So that should kind of tell you why this game kind of went the way it did and why they only had the ball for like 18 minutes of the entire game. They literally couldn't complete a pass.
I want to ask a serious question, and I know we're going to get to it when we preview this week's games. If Southern Miss loses to ULM, which we said a second ago seems very likely, is that the nail for Will Hall? Like, is he gone at that point, or like what's Southern Miss gonna like? What's their plan? What are they gonna do?
You think they have a plan?
Well, I mean that's a fair assessment. That's fair.
I mean, I've been out on Will Hall before the season started. I've been of the opinion that anytime at the end of a season that you have to release a statement from the athletic department saying we expect better, but this guy will be back next year. You're right. You might as well go ahead and fire the guy now, because you're basically just delaying the inevitable.
Or do you wait 3 more games, wait out the month of October, and then fire him at the bye week?
Who knows?
I don't think it really matters.
If it hasn't happened now,
I don't think it really matters.
They're just going to pick it at random. They're spinning a wheel, and every week the don't fire section gets slimmer and slimmer, and every week they just spin it.
And it's also not like, hey, this is a talented team that's underperforming. Like, this isn't App State. You know what I mean? Where you're like, the pieces are there on paper, but like just something seems disconnect. This is not a talented team at all. So like, even if you fire him and you bring in the interim, like, what are they going to do any differently?
Is it even going to get better?
Yeah, no, because it's like you still can't throw the ball, and you lost your best weapon offensively in the draft last year, and he's not coming back. And defensively, I mean, you're still getting gashed, and you can't get stopped. So at the end of the day, like, yeah, I guess you fire him at the bye week and get a jump on looking at potential candidates. And I think that both from like kind of a monetary perspective and for like the good of the football team, I think they need to look at FCS head coaches that are really performing right now. But I don't think anything's going to fundamentally change if or when you what point in the season you fire him, whether it be after the last game or during the bye week. Like, nothing's going to change. This team's going to win like one football game this season. So, but
so Brian, the stat you were talking about, I've just been looking. Rodemaker started the game 10 for 10. But after one quarter, he had 8 total yards.
Right. Yeah. That's what I mean, is like he literally can't push the ball further than the line of scrimmage. Like, it's insane.
5 for 11 on passes beyond 5 yards. But 11 for 12 within 5. He was exceptional in short situations.
Yeah, because they're going to let you have that all day.
Oh, yeah.
They do not care. Louisiana's like, yeah, we'll come up and make the tackle, and then what? And then Southern Miss is like, I don't know, we're out. We fold.
White flag.
Yeah. It's like a guy in poker. He's like, I got a pair of 2s, and you're like, all right. And then you're like, what
cool.
now?
Cool, bro.
I fold. All right. So let's get to week 7 here in the Sun Belt. We've got a Thursday night kick, which will be kicking off tonight as you're hearing this. Coastal Carolina, who's shockingly 4-1. I don't know if you guys are surprised by that as well. But they're 4-1. They're going to Harrisonburg to take on a James Madison team that's licking their wounds coming off of a loss to ULM, as we talked about. JMU is a 9.5 point home favorite, over under 60.5. Give me the over. At the very least, I know JMU scores points, and Coastal doesn't play a lot of defense. So,
give me JMU. I think they're going to be pissed off after losing to Monroe, and Coastal Carolina is going to be the unfortunate victim.
I like JMU here as well. Ethan Vasco's due for a bad game. JMU -9.
he's had his quarterly good game, and now it's back to regularly scheduled programming, is what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey,
week after next, he's bound for 250 on 70%. But
hey, can I just say that in my dynasty mode on College Football 25, I'm in the year 2026, and I just played Clemson in my season opener. Ethan Vasco is the quarterback at Clemson in 2026.
Things that will never
Football world.
happen in the history of the world.
No.
Ethan Vasco leaving the Sun Belt.
Just thought that was something worth sharing.
All right. Starting on Saturday, 3:30, ESPN Plus. Old Dominion is traveling to Georgia State. Georgia State is a 1.5 point home favorite. Over unders 54.5. Give me Old Dominion. Like, I don't know.
Not so confident.
No, I don't feel good about either of these teams, to be quite frank. I mean, we talked about Georgia State last week when we were recapping the Southern State game, and Old Dominion could just as easily show up like I said earlier and score 16 points. So I don't feel good about either of these teams, but I'll just take Old Dominion and close my eyes and hope for the best, I guess.
I'll take Georgia State.
I like Georgia State here too, but this is about as close to a pick'em as you're going to get this week.
Yeah, these two teams are very much on equal footing, despite one having a slightly better record than the other. 5:00, ESPN Plus. Southern Miss is traveling to Monroe to take on the ULM Warhawks. ULM is a 6.5 point home favorite. Over under is 41.5. I'm going to take ULM. I think the games that they've played very closely have been really good teams. Southern Miss is not that.
As they say in Monroe, talons out, baby.
Talons out, I suppose. ULM -6.5.
All right. All on the same page. 7:00 here, ESPN Plus. Arkansas State is traveling to San Marcos to take on Texas State. Texas State is a 2-touchdown, 14-point home favorite. Over under is 63.5. That's a lot of points. It's a lot of points. You guys go. I need to think about this because I don't really love any side of this or the total at this point.
Give me Arkansas State to cover. I think 14 is just too high. Considering Texas State's defensive efficiencies or inefficiencies, I should say. I'm not going to say Arkansas State's going to win the game, but I think it's closer than 14 points.
Can I say it's going to push? Texas State wins by exactly 14. This is a tough one. I think I'm going to take the under on this one. Both of these teams are more than capable of scoring their share of points in this game. But we've seen from both of them that they are equally as likely to just drop dead and score 20 points and call it an evening. So give me the under because I feel like odds are one of them's bound to just kind of crap the bed.
I can't wait till Arkansas State wins and I can come on here next week and just roast you.
Hey,
I can't wait.
I mean,
Matt would have you in like hell in a cell. Like it would be like you're not getting out. You're locked in.
I'm far more
just slam the door
ready
shut.
For that.
Yeah.
Texas State has severed all emotional ties I have to that team. They did me far too dirty in the first couple of weeks of the season. So I will take it if I have to, but it's not going to be as emotionally distressing as it previously was.
Matt's gonna be like, I'm not in here with you, you're in here with me. I'm gonna take the under I'm gonna take the under of 63.5 as well, just kind of for the same reason, Zeke. I have found that when these totals are super high and you expect both of these offenses to pop off is the second they don't. Like again, Arkansas State, South Alabama last week, I was like, wow, this is gonna be a shootout, and neither team can convert on third down. So
There it is.
So I'm gonna take the under. Also, Zeke, if you had taken Texas State and it would have pushed, that doesn't count as a loss. Just a heads up. So
Okay.
So just a heads up.
This man's about to take a push every week.
Well, they have to. Well, it has to be a solid number. Well, it has to be a solid number. If it's 13.5, you're going to get a result either way.
That's true.
All right, 7:30 ESPN Plus at Cajun Field. App State limps into Lafayette to take on Louisiana. Louisiana is a 10.5-point home favorite, over under 64.5. Matt, you were doing the Undertaker taunt before. I think Louisiana has Shawn Clark rest in peace after this game. I'm taking Louisiana. I think they crushed them, and the streak of, again, Undertaker, the streak of App State finding a way to lose bigly is going to continue.
So I won't be covering this one, so it does not violate my journalistic integrity to give a pick here. Cajuns by 90. Let's freaking go, dude. Cajun Field is going to be rocking. App State hasn't been to Cajun Field since the if I'm correct here, since the championship game in 21. And so Cajun Field is going to be absolutely rocking Saturday night. The weather's supposed to be great. Cajun's big.
I like that pick as well, but give me the under 64.5. I cannot fathom where those points are coming from. Like App State isn't going to go out and do what they did to UNC.
No, but here's the thing. Consider that App State has given up 100 points over the last 2 weeks. That's the only counter that I have.
Yeah. Give me the under. Consistency reigns supreme.
Continuing with the Undertaker metaphor, Matt, this is a casket match, and Shawn Clark already has like his whole body in the casket, and he's just got his hand on the door trying to keep it from being shut on him. Yeah. Buried alive. All right. Last game of the night, 8:00. ESPNU. Georgia Southern's doing a whiteout for this game. They are. Not that means anything, but that's what they're doing.
Is that not all Georgia Southern games?
Huh?
Look at their demographics.
No comment.
Oh,
no comment.
God.
Was that too much?
Can I excuse myself?
I feel like that was a pretty innocuous thing to say. I hope that didn't cross a line.
No comment.
Oh my God.
Marshall is a 1.5 point road favorite, over under 61.5. I used to watch MMA, and I'm a big believer in the phrase styles make fights. I think that Georgia Southern is a very bad matchup. Sorry, let me flip that around. I think Marshall is a bad matchup for Georgia Southern, so I'm going to take Marshall minus 1.5. I think their ability to run the football, if Braylon Braxton starts, he's dynamic, and they already had issues with a running quarterback, and their not inability, but just straight up outright refusal to put a spy on a quarterback against Nevada. That is not going to fly if Georgia Southern just decides that Braylon Braxton gets to run when and where he chooses, like it did at Nevada. So I just think this is a really bad matchup, Georgia Southern wise. They can't defensively. They really have their issues, and we've talked about those. And it seems to change by the week whether they can't stop the run or can't stop the pass. So I think Marshall beats them despite the whiteout and whatever else they try to get up for. I just don't think they have it kind of in them at this point defensively to get any stops. So I'm taking Marshall.
That shocks me. I was ready to give my pick as Southern to cover and win outright. And Brian, you're not the type of fan that's just going to always pick Southern, but for you to not pick Southern in this matchup has thrown me into a spiral. I felt pretty confident that Southern was going to maybe not beat up on a poor Marshall team, but I think there are distinct tiers between these two teams. So give me Marshall just because you just absolutely put me in a tailspin.
I'll be the one oddball. Give me Georgia Southern. I think J.C. French has a big game here. Jalen White has another strong performance on the ground as well, like he did before the bye week. I'll take the Eagles.
I'll say, Zeke, if I knew Stone Earl was starting for Marshall, I would have taken Southern and probably not even thought twice about it.
Sure.
But again, I watched the Nevada game and I literally tweeted, how many times are they going to let Nevada's quarterback just run free with no spy? And everybody responded to me, well, that's what happens when you don't have a real defensive coordinator. So I think that Georgia State lacked that dimension to their offense, especially Valliere. I don't remember how his name is pronounced, but he's not that dynamic with his feet. And so I think this gives Georgia Southern's defense another thing to think about, and they can't keep two thoughts in their head at the same time as far as what they want to do from a week-to-week basis. I don't think this is a good matchup for them, so I'm taking Marshall.
Fair enough.
That does it. That is the end of our slate here. We've talked about every game from last week. We've previewed the ones from this week. Guys, Matt, we'll start with you. Let everybody know where they can find you on socials, and then we'll kick it to Zeke and then over to me to close out.
You can find me on all social media platforms at Miguez Matt. Looking forward to what's going to be an incredible weekend of college football. Red River rivalry, Ohio State, Oregon, LSU, Ole Miss, and then of course some great Sun Belt games like we touched on. So it should be an awesome weekend of college football.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter as well at Zeke Palermo, ZekePalermo. I don't do a whole lot of fun stuff there. I'm bad at tweeting. I'd previously said and was then clowned for saying that I wanted to be funny on Twitter. I'm just not. I'm an unexciting follow.
The guy's got a great TikTok though. Go follow him.
Yeah, all right, Matt.
A lot of I only noticed this when I signed the account, like the Warm Weather Fans account up. A lot of relationship TikToks for you, Zeke. I noticed.
Oh,
I don't know.
Well,
yeah.
I'm
not trying to blow your spot up. I'm just saying, like, a lot of relationship content on your feed.
No, there's two.
Hey.
There's one really good, funny one, and then there's one. Hawk to a girl if you want to co-host. Where we're looking for guests. No. Talk to a podcast, number 2 podcast in the country.
Man knows his demographic.
I'm gonna veto that.
Demographic.
All right, you can find the podcast on pretty much any social platform except Instagram. I didn't really see a reason to set up an Instagram for the same stuff we're posting on Twitter and TikTok, to be quite honest with you. So you can find us everywhere at Warm Weather Fans. If that pops up, then we're on there, and if not, so, too bad, so sad. You can email the show warmweatherfans@gmail.com. You can find me on X mostly at Watch the Stone. We will be back next week to talk about all of these Week 7 games and get into Week 8. This has been another edition of Warm Weather Fans.